What if the silence, the crushing weight that stole your words, the very breath you couldn't find to whisper his name, wasn't a sign of his absence, but a different kind of conversation altogether? A secret held in the ache of your soul that you were just beginning to understand? You thought your inability to pray screamed rejection, a damning indictment of your faith's failure, didn't you? The truth is, in those desolate stretches where your knees felt too heavy to bend and your mind too clouded to form a single coherent plea, where the familiar comfort of spoken prayer vanished like mist, he was listening with an intensity you couldn't possibly comprehend from your vantage point of pain. It wasn't about the eloquence of your words, or the fervor of your petitions. It was about the raw, exposed state of your being, and in the terrifying vulnerability of that spiritual paralysis, you were, unknowingly, offering the most profound prayer of your life. You remember, don't you? The nights you stared at the ceiling, the silence in the room deafening, amplifying the silence in your heart. You tried. Oh, how you tried. You'd open your mouth, a desperate gasp for air that felt like a gasp for his presence, and nothing would come out. Just a choke, a sob, a hollow echo in the vast emptiness. This wasn't the gentle quiet of meditation. This was the brutal quiet of abandonment, or so it felt. The words were gone. The structure of prayer, the familiar rhythm of address, confession, petition, and thanksgiving, felt like a foreign language spoken on another planet. You were adrift, cut off not just from the practice of prayer, but from the perceived connection itself. It was a profound loneliness, a spiritual isolation that gnawed you, whispering insidious lies. You're not worthy. You've messed up too many times. He's tired of you. This silence is his answer, his turning away. The pain wasn't just the absence of his felt presence, it was the agony of believing you had finally exhausted his patience, that you had crossed an invisible line from which there was no return. Every failed attempt to pray was a fresh wound, a confirmation of your perceived spiritual bankruptcy. You saw others praying, effortlessly it seemed, their faces serene or earnest, and a bitter envy, mixed with a deep shame, would curl in your gut. Why them? Why not you? What secret understanding did they possess that remained hidden from your grasp? You felt like a spiritual invalid, unable to perform the most basic function of faith, convinced that this inability was proof of your utter brokenness, not in a way that invited grace, but in a way that deserved rejection. This period wasn't just inconvenient, it was a crisis. It stripped away everything you thought you knew about relating to the divine. You had relied on words, on rituals, on a certain feeling that accompanied prayer. When those were gone, you were left with nothing but the raw, exposed nerve of your need, and the terrifying possibility that even that need was somehow defective. You couldn't articulate your pain, you couldn't voice your fears, you couldn't even muster the energy to ask for help from the one you believed held the answers. It was a unique kind of suffering, this prayerlessness, a spiritual drought that parched your very soul. You questioned everything. Was he even real? Had it all been a delusion, a crutch you had now outgrown, or, worse, broken beyond repair? The silence felt like a confirmation of your deepest doubts. It felt like the end. But the story didn't end there, did it? Because even in the suffocating silence, in the heart of your spiritual wilderness, something else was happening, something subtle, almost imperceptible, a hidden current beneath the frozen surface of your soul. It wasn't a voice you heard with your ears. It wasn't a dramatic intervention that cleared the skies and filled you with immediate, overwhelming peace, though you secretly longed for that. It was something far more mysterious, more intimate, a secret whispered not into your ears, but directly into the core of your being. It started small. A fleeting sense of calm in the midst of chaos, a moment where the crushing weight lifted just enough for you to take a full breath. A sudden, unbidden thought of comfort, so unlike your usual anxious ruminations that it felt alien, yet strangely familiar. You'd be walking, lost in the usual fog of despair, and you'd notice the way the light fell on a leaf, or the intricate pattern on a spiderweb, and for just a second, the beauty would pierce through, a tiny pinprick of wonder in the darkness. These weren't things you had consciously prayed for or sought out. They were simply there, unearned, unexpected gifts. And they felt resonant. They felt like whispers, not from within yourself, but from somewhere outside, somewhere higher. A gentle nudge. A quiet acknowledgement. It was as if, while you were fixated on your inability to speak to him, he was busy speaking to you in a language you had forgotten how to recognize, the language of presence, of subtle grace, of quiet affirmation. You began to notice a shocking truth. His presence wasn't contingent on your performance. It wasn't a reward for eloquent prayers or consistent devotion. It was a constant, underlying reality, like the air you breathe, there whether you acknowledge it or not. Your inability to pray wasn't a barrier you erected. It was a state you were in, a season of dryness, yes, but one he was navigating with you, not abandoning you within. This was a crucial insight, a hidden key that unlocked a new understanding of your relationship with the divine. The secret wasn't in finding the perfect words, but in acknowledging your state, however broken, before him. Your silence was your prayer, a raw, unedited declaration of your need, your pain, your emptiness. He wasn't waiting for you to get it together. He was meeting you in the mess. You realized that the most vital connection wasn't through the mind or the mouth, but through the heart, the very core of your being, where the raw, unarticulated cries of your soul resonated louder than any spoken word. Another profound realization, a truth often hidden in plain sight, was that the struggle itself, the very pain of your prayerlessness, was holy ground. Your wrestling, your doubt, your despair wasn't pushing him away. It was, paradoxically, bringing you into a deeper, albeit uncomfortable, intimacy. This wasn't the comfortable familiarity of answered prayers. This was the raw, exposed intimacy of shared suffering, of being seen in your weakness and still being held. The hidden warning you might have missed before was that reliance on the feeling of prayer or the act of praying can sometimes become a substitute for reliance on God himself. When the feelings and the ability were stripped away, you were left with nothing but him, and in that stripped-down state, you discovered a bedrock of faith that didn't depend on your fluctuating emotions or capabilities. The secret here was recognizing that true faith isn't the absence of doubt or struggle, but trusting that he is present even within the doubt and struggle. Then came the miraculous way his presence made itself known. It wasn't a voice from heaven, but a quiet conviction that settled deep within your bones. It was the way a scripture you'd read 100 times suddenly leaped off the page and spoke directly to your current pain. It was a friend calling at just the right moment, offering words that felt divinely inspired. It was the inexplicable strength you found to get out of bed on days you felt utterly crushed. It was the unexpected kindness of a stranger that felt like a tangible hug from the divine. These moments were not random. They were intentional, specific acts of grace designed to remind you, in a language your prayerless heart could understand, that you were seen, you were known, and you were loved, not for your ability to pray, but simply because you were his. The miracle wasn't the restoration of eloquent prayer, that would come later, gradually, but the undeniable, felt presence of God in the absence of what you believed prayer had to be. You began to understand that his listening here isn't limited to the frequency of spoken words. It is tuned to the frequency of your very existence, the silent broadcast of your soul's condition. The final insight, the one that cemented this new understanding, was the shocking simplicity of his requirement, not perfect performance, but present vulnerability. You didn't need to fix yourself before coming to him. You just needed to be before him, however messy, however silent. The hidden path through the wilderness of prayerlessness wasn't found by trying harder to pray, but by simply resting in the truth that he was already there, listening, holding, waiting patiently for you to perceive his quiet, unwavering presence. So, what does this mean for you, right now, in your own season, whatever it may be? It means that if you are in a place where the words won't come, where prayer feels impossible, where the silence is deafening, you are not failing. You are perhaps, unknowingly, entering into a deeper, more fundamental form of connection. Your inability to pray isn't a sign of his distance, but an invitation to experience his nearness in ways you haven't before. The secret is to stop striving to do prayer and simply be in his presence, even when that presence feels like nothing more than the air you breathe or the ache in your chest. Look for the subtle signs, the quiet whispers, the unexpected moments of grace. They are there, hidden in plain sight, confirmations that his listening ear is always attentive to the silent language of your heart. Don't let the enemy convince you that your silence is a barrier. It is, in fact, a direct line. So, breathe. Just breathe. And trust that even when you couldn't pray, he still listened, and he is listening still. And perhaps, just perhaps, in the stillness, you might begin to hear his response, not in words, but in the quiet, miraculous language of his unfailing love.